Martial arts is an increasingly popular sport for people who want to get in shape or learn something about self-defense. But for some Chicago area families, martial arts has been a brutal lesson in heartbreak. Children enrolled in schools that teach a style known as Chung Moo Quan. Pam Zeckman reports on what happened to one suburban youth who got caught up in the cult and the con.
He was 17 when he decided to go to a neighborhood martial arts school to learn how to protect himself. The school is one of 10 in the Chicago area, organized 12 years ago around the teachings of John C. Kim, a so-called Korean martial arts master who teaches a style known as Chung Moo Quan.
My son, his entire life, all that he is, all that he will be, appears to be owned by Chung Moo Quan.
Do you think it's a cult?
Oh, yeah. I think it's a cult.
In the beginning, his mother tried to be open-minded as she watched her son's behavior change radically. But like all cults, the school drove a wedge between them. There were fights, tears, and then resignation that her son was lost. To warn others, she agreed to tell us his story, but asked for anonymity.
There is a fear that if they find us making this conversation, that they may injure our family members or they may injure our son, who is deeply in their grasp.
When her son started, the lessons were inexpensive. He was a devoted student, practicing Chung Moo Quan exercises each day. But as he progressed toward a black belt, the cost of lessons and tests increased dramatically.
At one time he came at the house and was trying to get a loan for $5,000. And we were, what do you need that for? And he says, for a test. And we said, $5,000 for a test? He says, that's nothing. Later on, it'll be $15,000.
She says he was holding down 3 jobs, turning his paychecks over to the school and getting an allowance from his instructor for living expenses. He moved into an apartment with other Chung Moo Quan students. One day, his mother caught them going through her jewelry box and stealing food.
And I said, if you're that hungry, I'll feed you, but I really don't want you stealing from me.
At school ceremony, she was shocked by the demeanor of the students.
They all seem to have a glaze in their eyes. They all seem automated.
She says it went beyond the respect and discipline associated with martial arts.
It was like a brainwashing. His whole life was waiting for someone else to dictate to him what to do, when to eat, when to move, when to breathe.
Her son once abhorred violence. Now he was obsessed with it.
Well, he would talk about how they could do certain moves and take a person's arm and pull it out of the socket. He said, and then you would swing it at the person. And he says that alone would put them in shock and you would have won the competition. And I'm like, you're talking about dismembering people?
At one point, her son was seriously injured on the job and couldn't walk. The doctors released him to his mother's care. But after he talked to his Chung Moo Quan instructor, other students came to her house and took her son away.
And my son said, I made a mistake. I should not have returned to the home of my parents. And so, my husband and I argued with him, with our son, and with the people taking him out. But there was like a wall we were arguing with. They weren't hearing us.
With the passage of time, the injury healed, and for her son, Chung Moo Quan became a career.
He says, I will be making a good living when I become an instructor. He says, this is a life process for me, and I'll be able to retire at 35.
Her son eventually moved to another state where he lives with other instructors and teaches at a Chung Moo Quan school. And what do you see down the road for him?
I think he's trapped. I think he's stuck. I sort of think he's a prisoner.
You feel like you've lost your son to Chung Moo Quan?
Oh, very much so, yes. Almost like he died.
The owner of the Naperville school at the time is no longer there. A spokesman for the schools in Illinois denies that the schools are a cult. He says they teach martial arts, but also encourage discipline in young people, keeping them off drugs and away from crime. And he says the exercise relieves stress and has cured health problems for many students.
Reaction tonight from the Illinois Attorney General to a Channel 2 investigative report on the Chung Moo Quan martial arts schools. Reports by the investigative unit have documented how the schools operate like a cult and exploit students. And Pam has a follow-up report tonight.
There are no laws in Illinois that deal with cults, but there are laws to protect consumers from fraud, and specifically to protect martial arts students from being intimidated into signing exorbitant contracts for lessons. Today, the Illinois Attorney General charged the Chung Moo Quan schools with violating those laws.
Nobody's going to intimidate the Attorney General's office. We know what the law is, and we know how to enforce the law.
The suit says the schools illegally signed students to contracts that exceed $2,500 a year and refuse to give them copies of their contracts. The suit seeks a $50,000 fine and a court order to stop the practice or close the schools.
The Physical Fitness Act was written to protect against schemes like this.